Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, we have the Democratic leader in the House to respond to an agenda by the Republicans, and we're going to talk about his agenda and his caucus's agenda, and then two of the state's leading reporters weigh in on the big changes in Harrisburg. Pennsylvania politics and government in depth and in detail, and guess what? It all starts right now.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, let me just start out by saying we have the, I think this is your first appearance, right, Mr. Leader?
Yes, it is.
We have the leader of the Democrats in the House, Frank Dermody. He represents a district in western Pennsylvania. We don't have time to get into your district. Maybe we'll have you back and you can talk about that.
Like to
all
do
right,
that.
You have seen it all. You have been in the minority. Your party's is in the minority. They're not in the majority. You've been in the majority. Now, tell me what you prefer.
I prefer to be in the majority. Yeah,
No
we're upstairs
kidding.
on the fourth floor. We'll take the first floor.
You got it. All right, look, big change. Your caucus now has 91 folks in it. You were in power for the last 4 years. You're out of power now. Got a new Republican leader, Mike Terzai, who's been on this program many times. Let's talk about, all things being even, what does your caucus, what do the Democrats in the House want to see this session of the legislature do?
Well, there's several things we want to see get done, we want to work on. We want to work with the governor on. I mean, education is key. Over the last 8 years, we've made great strides. Ed Rendell's legacy, I believe, the improvements he's made in our educational system. We need to continue on with those improvements. We want to make sure that we don't go backwards. Test scores have gone up. He's funded significant new programs that have worked. We want to continue with those programs. Education. Go ahead.
So hold on. No, let's just. I want to, before you move on. So the governor has talked about a 10% administrative cut. We don't know exactly. We'll find out on March 4 when he delivers his budget, March 8, I guess, when he delivers the budget, and we'll see where that goes. But so your point would be you wouldn't support cuts in the education budget. Is that correct?
That's
of all
correct.
the things that you go ahead.
And that's correct, yes. I mean, the other thing is this, we've been able to maintain our subsidies back to the school districts.
Right.
And school districts' budget are in place for this year, for next year. And if we cut significantly, make significant cuts in our subsidies to education, it has an immediate impact on property taxes. And that's the other problem. You know, we face that statewide. It's an issue. And property tax increases hurt everybody. It's not based on any person's ability to pay. So it's a real issue. It's a real problem.
Well, all right. Before we leave education, I'll let you go into the other parts of your agenda. You had the school districts were the beneficiaries of stimulus money, and they were the beneficiaries of this increase called costing out study. You know, I think $250 million last year, larger amounts in previous years. You will admit that they're probably going. The best you can get is maybe to hold your own.
That's correct.
On the I mean, you're not looking for increases, are you?
I think the best we can get is be held harmless.
Okay,
That's
go
correct.
ahead. Next agenda.
Health care is important, and you know, right now we're dealing with adult basic, which covers 42,000 folks, working families, those types of things. And those folks, as of February 28th, will not be covered any longer if we don't do something about that. We want to make sure we maintain that adult basic program, at least for the time being, get us through the budget season until we see where we are.
Yeah, this is a program. There are about, I think, 45,000 people on it. There's somewhere probably 100,000 people who are eligible for the program.
That's right.
It's for folks who can't qualify for Medicaid because they earn a little too much, and working folks. But let's talk about that a little bit. The governor has announced that they've made some arrangements to continue it, but the premium costs have gone up you can help me out.
Well, the premium
3 or
costs
4 times.
3 or 4 times, maybe, and sometimes
so
more.
So what would you do about that?
The impact. Well, we had one work with Highmark, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, see if we can work a deal with them. There was at one point there was a merger between Independence Blue Cross. There was a merger proposed in Highmark from the western part of the state. The federal government said there was no antitrust issues. Now, the insurance commissioner didn't do that. That would have put $3 billion into adult basic, and that program would be continuing. Those folks would be covered.
All right, so go ahead.
The administration has proposed that we work with some of the funding from the new the federal health care program.
Okay.
So at the same time, while they're suggesting we should take money and use some of the proceeds and help from that program to help continue adult basic, they reported a bill out that would do away with it, because obviously Pennsylvania is suing to have ourselves removed from that health care plan. And so it's really incredible that at one side we're going to asking them for help and using the money from that and the proceeds from that to fund adult basic and report a bill out that would kill it.
Okay, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, I want to ask you, if you have another item or two.
I do have an item or two, yes.
Okay, and then we can talk about things where you think you can work with the Republican. Maybe things you just don't like, you're opposing. That's okay. It's, it's a two-party system. All right, but we'll be back. Talking about paying things, we're going to pay some bills, and then we'll come right back.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by PAConstructionJobs.com. For more information about rewarding careers in the highway construction industry, visit PAConstructionJobs.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to the program. We have Frank Dermody. He's a State House member from Western Pennsylvania, but more importantly, he's a Democratic leader in the House. We're talking about, the Democratic agenda in the House, and we're going to get to where they might work with the Republicans and in the coming months. All right, we talked about education and health care. What else?
Transportation and infrastructure is crucial, and we've got some real issues, not just in Western Pennsylvania, but throughout the state, and funding for roads, bridges, and transit. And it's an issue we have to address. We have a significant number of bridges that are deficient, that are structurally not sound, that we have to begin. And we have roads. Everybody knows about our road situation. We've made some improvements, but there's a tremendous amount of work to be done. And funding for transit is crucial. With the tolling of Route 80 failing, and we're not able to move forward with that, we are really strapped. And I think
stimulus money will be going for that. Tolling Route 80 didn't go anywhere, and Governor Rendell's, I don't know if he wanted to sell it and lease it, but he wanted to do, had a comment to get rid of the turnpike. Or something you drive all the time.
I drive it all the time. It's a blessing that didn't happen. I mean, because the funding would not have been there. The stock market crashed and everything else took place. There would never have been that money they said was going to be there for the sale of the turnpike.
Hey, well, quickly, just on another, that just came into whatever head the host has here on this show. What about this idea of getting rid of the Turnpike Commission and putting it in with PennDOT? Is that something to explore anyway? Do we need a separate commission for the Turnpike? You've been in the House for a long time. What's your thought?
I think the Turnpike works real well. Okay. And it's as good a shape as ever has been since I've been driving it for the last 20 years. PennDOT is a huge operation. It's a huge bureaucracy. Right. I don't see any gain from taking the Turnpike, which works, and putting it at PennDOT into that morass.
Right.
I mean, the governor says he's going to fix that. I certainly hope he does. I mean, there's great people who work there, don't get me wrong. Right. But it's one of the largest bureaucracies I've ever had to deal with.
And you're not going to criticize the Turnpike. You're afraid you go out there, Mr. Leader. The trucks won't come by and help you if you get stuck on the side of the road.
Right.
All right. So we got infrastructure, education, and health care. What about these reforms that are going on? I mean, a lot of them passed this past week in the House with huge votes. I mean, Democrats and Republicans universally supporting a lot of these changes.
Well, most of these changes were passed last session with Democratic bills and Democratic members sponsoring them. We offered several amendments that we felt improved them, made them better, made the government more open, more transparent. But they failed on party lines. However, at the end of the day, it was a start. We think we could have made it better. We will continue to work to make it better.
You had one big reform that you'd want to do. Frank Dermody is God for the day.
God for the day.
one big reform. What would you do?
I think one of the ones that was offered, amendment that was offered yesterday, would have include all state agencies, FIA, the Public Utility Commission, Fish and Boat Commission, all those available on a portal right now. You can go in real-time information.
So you're talking, would this be their budget? Would it be
budget, debt,
programs,
programs, contracts, and who's spending the money, where they're spending the money, who bid on the contracts, and you can get it in real time. I mean, the argument is we can file right to know requests. That's a cumbersome and oftentimes expensive process. And if you're looking for open government, it's available on the web. Let's make it available to everybody.
So that's one of the things. Do you think that they're going to take up the tough issues like campaign finance reform or lobbyist gift bans and real ethics reform? I mean, they're sort of go to the heart of some of the things that have been debated over the years.
Well, and I hope we do campaign finance reform. Yeah. We have to, and it's become evident over the last several years, particularly with the Supreme Court decision, that at least in Pennsylvania we need to take a look at campaign finance reform. I don't see it on the horizon. Yeah. We will continue to make it part of our agenda, though.
But the big issue before the state, and before I let you go, I got to ask you about this, has to do with the state budget. I mean,
right.
$4 billion structural deficit. They keep calling it structural. I understand what that means in academic terms. Operationally, maybe you don't need $4 billion immediately, but you are going to need a huge chunk of money. I mean, can this be done without a tax hike?
Well, the governor says he can do it. I'm willing to listen March 8th and see what he proposes. But in our budget, as you know, there are only certain areas where there's real money.
Yeah.
I mean, if we have to get $4 billion, that's significant. And it's education, it's Medicaid, it's corrections. Yeah. And when we say Medicaid, people think of welfare. Yep. They think of cash payments. Most of that, or over 80% of that money, is going to senior citizens and nursing homes.
Yeah.
You've got to keep that in perspective. Our most vulnerable citizens are out there, but that's where the money is where you can go cut.
Yeah.
Now, you start cutting there, you're looking at counties' human service programs being slashed, which means all those programs people are used to back home will be either cut or property taxes go up.
Mr. Leader, look, I want to thanks for coming on. You're welcome on here anytime. You got some things you want to talk about.
We have some more to go over. I'd love to come back.
All right,
Terry.
you're welcome. We'll get you back.
Thank you.
All right, there it is. All right, we have a duo of Pennsylvania's leading journalists. They're going to come in. We're going to talk about what happened. Reform, Governor Corbett, a different style than Governor Rendell. No way, no way. We'll be back with more following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Brad Bumsted and Tony Romeo, both reporters, one with a Trib Review, one with KDKA and KYW, two large radio stations. All right, for our little reporter roundup that we do, Brad, I want to start with you. We have a bunch of stuff to get over. Culture shock for reporters in Harrisburg. The differences and the styles between Governor Rendell and Governor Corbett. What do you have to say about that? What are the differences?
Well, it's really been the buzz at the Capitol over the past couple of weeks that Corbett did not hold a press conference his first 3 weeks in office. And the culture shock comes in because Ed Rendell, talked to the press seemingly every chance he got. By the end of his term, he was doing 2-a-days. And he was, as some say, a shoot-from-the-lip kind of guy.
Right.
He would speculate about anything and everything. The difference here is that Corbett, in his DNA, is a federal prosecutor.
Yeah,
federal prosecutors don't talk until they're ready to go to court with an indictment or ready to go to trial.
Yeah.
And Corbett's getting all his ducks in a row on the budget. Now, he did subsequently hold a news conference to announce his pick for Attorney General, Linda Kelly, a career prosecutor from Pittsburgh, and at that time handled other questions, but that was 3 weeks and a couple days after. Yeah,
I mean, his press secretary to Governor Corbett, a guy named Kevin Harley, is on the record on a number of occasions said, This is not Ed Rendell. Governor Corbett is not Ed Rendell, right? None of the same style.
Corbett has said, "I'm not Ed Rendell."
That's right. Both. Go ahead.
Now, the only way it might not be culture shock is I think everybody expected this. Those of us who've covered both men for a while, but maybe not to the degree. Not only has he not only had a news conference until this week. Not only did he not have a news conference for his first 3 weeks in office, but he only had one press conference since being elected.
Yeah.
The good thing is that when he did have a press conference, he did at least give and take with the press on a wide variety of topics. Although, as Brad said, he's not going to blurt things out the way Ed Rendell did.
He's more cautious. He's going to be more aloof and not do the. I mean, it is a culture shock, and And we'll have to see how it develops.
I think one thing you have to give him the benefit of the doubt on is that he says he's hunkered down over the budget. And as you just heard from the Democratic leader in the House, you got a $4 billion deficit.
It's a tough job.
So yeah, I mean, for the moment, he's got a good reason not to be out there in the press.
Yeah, he's drilling down on the budget, no question about it, and that's taking the time. But I think that at his press conference the other day, he was relaxed. And
I read your accounts.
Yeah, he was
good.
Laid back and didn't seem agitated by any of the other unrelated questions.
In fact, he made a joke about his lack of press conferences and chided us for not laughing.
Yeah, well, I want to get to look. This guy Kermit Gosnell, a doctor in Philadelphia, was ran an abortion clinic. All horrendous stories coming out of it about late-term abortion. 7 counts of murder charged by Seth Williams, the Philadelphia DA. There was a hearing up here this week about what's going on with the oversight of that clinic.
There wasn't any. If you listen to the prosecutors from the Philadelphia DA's office, they came before 2 Senate committees and laid out the grand jury's report, not only on the horrific things that happened at that clinic, and we're not going to go through that. You just have to trust us that it's unimaginable the things they described that were going on there, but also unimaginable that there were 2 state agencies tasked with the oversight of this clinic who, according to the prosecutor's testimony, simply did nothing.
And some had not, if I read one of the accounts correctly, they hadn't been some inspection for, what, 10 years?
Since 1993, the Health Department had
more than 10. That's almost 2 decades. Go ahead.
Well, the Health Department hadn't inspected, but apparently in state law, there is no requirement under law that abortion clinics be inspected. However, this place was so filthy and the conditions were so horrendous that from a public health standpoint, not only the Department of Health, but the City Department of Health in Philadelphia should have acted on this. But the real question lies with the Department of State, which licenses doctors. And there were serious complaints filed against him.
No one followed up on it.
Well, they were some were followed up on and dismissed. They said there was nothing to them.
We're going to run to a break. I have a question I want to ask you about this. This is a huge national story when we come back, and then we'll move on to government reform and what's going on in the legislature with that. All right, back following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Hi, welcome back. All right, we're doing a journalist update here on some important changes that are going on in Harrisburg. All right, Tony, I want to ask you, before we leave this Gosnell thing, the legislature had there had been one hearing. Was it a Senate hearing?
Yes.
And walk me through what you think is going to happen.
Well, what's going to happen is this was a joint hearing of 2 different Senate committees. They will now independently proceed to have their own hearings. Presumably, they will call state employees from these agencies that we're supposed to be regulating. They say they'll use subpoena power if necessary, but as the DA from Philadelphia said, these employees have already lawyered up. And $100,000 plus has been spent on outside counsel for these people. And prosecutors from the Philadelphia DA's office said they're still not cooperating. Their investigation is continuing, and these agencies, employees, are still not cooperating.
But we're going to hear a lot more about this. Right?
Presumably, yeah.
Brad.
Absolutely, we are. And they're going to be subpoenaed, most likely. They're going to come in. And the question is going to be whether they take the Fifth Amendment. These people still have some criminal exposure, let's call it. Seth Williams has said the grand jury did not decide on any criminal charges against any
That's the Philly
state
DA,
officials.
Seth Williams.
Yes. No criminal charges, no reason to charge anybody. However, he says it's still open and they're still investigating.
One quick wrap-up on that is just that the DA said the grand jury concluded in the end they couldn't decide what was more offensive, what happened to the patients in the clinic or the disavowal of any oversight by people who were supposed to be protecting them.
All right, let's turn to some gaming legislation. As everybody knows, the Pennsylvania, we're going to, by the end of it, have either 16 or 17 sites by the time they're all finished with various types of gaming. And there's now the enforcement side of it to make sure that the laws are upheld is done within bureau or a segment within the gaming board operation as itself. I got that right?
Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement.
Enforcement. And now there's been an effort in the legislature to take that out of the gaming board authority, or so to speak, oversight, and to put it in to either the Attorney General's office, and I think the governor has said, Governor Corbett has said, maybe even the state police.
He said that as a candidate. The bill says Attorney General.
Okay.
And that's where it's headed. And that bill came up this past week, and it was approved in committee. And the arguments against it were that you're still not going to have information sharing within the Attorney General's office from the criminal side to the civil side with these investigators. The argument for it is that you shouldn't have an investigative arm working under the people who issue the licenses in a quasi-judicial capacity. And they want to remove that and put it over to the Attorney General.
Just so people understand that there's this mentality, if you will, in law enforcement that they will not share information on ongoing investigations, criminal investigations, with what are non-law enforcement agencies. And BIE, as constituted now within the gaming board, is not a law enforcement agency. And there was critical information back when the licenses were being awarded that apparently the gaming board didn't get because state police had it and would not share it with BIE.
So I get it. So this is to some extent sort of a jurisdictional dispute, and then one side says keep it within the under the gaming board auspices. It's working now. The other side says it should be more independent and free from, and for Tony's arguments for the investigative side, just better for sharing information. If there is any wrongdoing, to make sure that it gets prosecuted.
And one fascinating development with this, Terry, was that at the committee hearing, the House Gaming Oversight Committee, the Democrat on the committee, Representative Florindo Fabrizio from Erie, starts off by saying, I got a call 5 minutes before I came here, and Senator Jane Earl, who was the chairwoman of the counterpart of oversight in the Senate, he says, Senator Earl told me to let you know that she doesn't agree with this bill, and in essence, it's not going to move if it gets over to the Senate. And that was just a really unusual way to communicate. I spoke with Jane Earl this week, and she said, I am against it, but I can't speak for the caucus. So she appeared to moderate that position.
Well, Tony, we got about 45 seconds left. But in the end, I mean, obviously, if the House goes through this and the Senate doesn't even take it up, I mean, what's...
Right. Yeah, the only thing is the Governor Corbett, during his press conference this week, indicated, that he thinks this is a good idea. Whether that will change minds in the Senate, I don't know.
All right. Well, look, thanks for coming up. Great update. We'll keep our eye. We got the budget next to worry about, as if, worry about means big news coming up. All right. Thanks again, as always, for watching Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and you stay well.